The next morning was a school day. Like all the under-18s in Smythe, she had to be in class. At 9 o'clock, Wisteria was on her window seat in the cramped classroom. The school was just an ordinary house used as a school. The old schools were in Norton, and now only the biters hung out there. This meant the younger students and pupils were crammed into this makeshift building. It was like most of the buildings, in desperate need of repair. Several of the windows were broken and replaced by wooden panels. Many of the ceiling panels were missing. There were even holes in the roof and the walls. Handwritten graffiti covered the walls, and even after several attempts to scrub it off, it still remained. The room needed to be repainted, but that was a luxury. "Ladies and gentlemen, I need you to quiet down. As part of your reward for all your hard work, I'm giving you a test," Mr. Silas Chung, the mathematics teacher, announced to the Year 11 class. He scribbled the test over the black square on the wall which served as their blackboard. "Mr. Chung, what's the point of taking the stupid test? No one cares," Stephen Hindle yelled. "It's not like I need it to get a job." Some students laughed. "Stephen, if you want to leave, by all means, get out of my class." Apparently annoyed, Mr. Chung pointed to the door. The boy hesitated. "Are you afraid?" the teacher asked. The younger man got to his feet, glanced over at Wisteria, and then winked at her. She quickly looked away from his hypnotic blue eyes. "Does anyone else want to join Mr. Hindle on his crusade?" the man asked the class. No one said a word. Wisteria wanted to leave with him. Maybe they would be able to spend time together, and then he would tell her how beautiful she was. She laughed at her foolishness, because she couldn't compare to Stephen's girlfriend, Haley Davenport. Haley was simply beautiful. She glanced at Haley and her friends, Karen, Melissa, and Yvette, as they sat together at the back of the class. Haley's light gray eyes shot from Stephen over to Wisteria, and her pretty face briefly reflected a frown. Wisteria, on the other hand, was short, shapely, and dark with black hair and very dark eyes. "Hindle, what are you waiting for? Get out of my class," Mr. Chung repeated. "You can't talk to us like that," Gareth Hubbard, Stephen's best friend, piped in. "Really, Gareth?" the man asked. "Yeah, you shouldn't." Stephen continued his defiance. Chung walked up to Stephen and stopped when he was about a foot away. Though the man was shorter than Stephen, he didn't look intimidated. This was unusual, because Stephen's father, Tom Hindle, was one of the senior scientists in the town. His father ran the quarantine center and was part of the group still trying to find a cure. He was also on the leadership council, and this made Stephen as untouchable as any student could be. Most teachers treated him and other children of the island's leadership with kid gloves. They could get away with anything except missing school. Not even Stephen could do that. The number 2 rule in the Isle of Smythe was to earn their keep. This meant everyone had a job, and one of their jobs was to go to school. The number 1 rule was to follow the rules. Break the rules, and you'd be leaving the Isle of Smythe. They all had seen what happened to the Nelsons. No one wanted to face a life outside. "Mr. Chung, those biters don't scare me," Stephen boasted. "Hindle, have you ever seen the infected?" The teacher raised a brow in disbelief. Stephen's rebellion was futile, but it endeared him to his classmates and to her. He was a native of the town and not a refugee. Some locals never went outside since the Nero outbreak. In her heart, Wisteria knew he'd be less pompous if he understood what the outside really looked like. "Give me a shotgun and I'll be fine," Stephen continued to brag. A couple of the students cheered. In the days following the outbreak, Wisteria, her mother, and her brother traveled from Dover to Norton. On a normal day, the journey took an hour and a half, but it took them over 3 months to make it through. Those were the dark days. She shuddered at the memory of those days and nights of continual screaming by people she knew who were turning into biters or being dragged away at night. Going to school was like going on vacation for her when they first arrived, but that was before she'd met Haley. Now she was stuck here. In her heart, she wanted to believe that she wasn't going to be in the Isle of Smythe forever. One day, all this madness would blow over, and she would be able to return to Lagos, to her real life. This was why she needed to be a tracker. It was a job that taught her how to take care of herself on the outside, ensuring that when the family was ready to leave, she'd survive. Stephen slammed his book on the table and dropped into his seat. Victorious, Mr. Chung smirked and returned to the blackboard. "Don't worry, I'm not going anywhere," Stephen whispered to her. Gareth chuckled. Wisteria ignored them both. They weren't actually her friends. Most days she didn't operate in the same universe as Stephen or Gareth. "Stephen, I gave you a chance to leave my class. That offer is still open," Chung fumed. "Wisteria, do you want to join him?" "She wants you to kick her out of class with Stephen," Yvette said with a slight French accent. Several students laughed. "Make all her dreams come true," Melissa Abner added with a snort. "Come on, Karen, she's not that desperate," Haley responded sympathetically. The rest of the class, including Stephen, erupted into laughter. In the 2.5 years that she'd lived in Smythe, her crush on Stephen was a never-ending source of ridicule. Trying to ignore them, she focused her attention on her notebook and scribbled the words, "Colista, Bren, Navida, Dor, Elson," over and over. She didn't know what the words meant, but they gave her comfort.